So, one of the questions that I want you to think about this week and perhaps discuss on the discussion board is it's a big question. It's kind of the 30,000 foot version of what we've been walking through and thinking about this week. And one way of expressing the question is this way: should law, politics, should institutionalized power, that would be the better way to say it. Should institutionalized power in our society have as its purpose making good people? Or should institutionalized power have as its purpose preserving freedom of individuals to determine for themselves what it means to be a good person? And what I'm driving at is this, is that should we use our public schools? Should we use our tax code? Should we use our laws as tools that will create people who have a particular set of values, a particular set of beliefs, a particular set of habits that will cause them to be the kinds of people that those in power have determined are good people? Okay, I'm not saying should we prevent people from doing bad things like murder and so forth. That's not what I'm asking. What I want to know is, should we use our institutionalized power to create people who have a particular set of beliefs, values, and attitudes that we've collectively, or those in power, have determined make people good? Or should we use our systems of power as a way to, or should we use our systems of power to protect each individual's ability to determine what it means to be a good person by their own criteria, as long as that's not infringing on other people's, lives and experiences? Maybe another way to think about this is, in terms of what we've been talking about this week in virtue ethics, should each individual be free to define the good life for him or herself? Or is there some definition of the good life that people should be compelled to work towards? And by compelled, again, I'm thinking about our institutions, our schools, our laws, our courts, our tax system. So think about a really obvious example is that our tax system indicates that our society has chosen to incentivize people to have children. The more children you have, the more tax breaks you get. I mean, it's a weird system, right? Because the more children that you have, the more likely you are a burden on the tax system. But at the same time, we give you tax deductions for each of the children that you have. So you're actually increasing the burden and paying less into the system the more children you have. And that seems to be one way that the tax system encourage people to think about what their responsibilities are in life. Same thing with marriage. Our tax system incentivizes marriage. It incentivizes monogamy in particular, right? By giving tax breaks to those who participate in that institution. And so you can see other kinds of things that do this as well. Like we looked this week at things like Americans with Disability Act accommodations, anti-discrimination laws in housing and business and so forth. These seem to be largely value-driven policies that indicate that those in power, or again, maybe it's us collectively, have decided that it's best to be the kind of person that doesn't discriminate against another person by virtue of their race or their sex or their sexual orientation. And so we codify that in law and create punishments, disincentives for being that kind of person. Same thing with hate crimes, right? Hate crime is the idea that you've done something more wrong if you kill somebody because you hate some feature of their identity than if you killed them because they did something that made you mad. Okay, so you have two people that come up on trial for killing a person, and they both killed a person because they didn't like what that person did. But one of those two people didn't like what that person did, and part of the reason they didn't like what that person did was because of their race or their sex or their religion. And again, you can see this is an attempt to legislate particular attitudes, to discourage people from having particular beliefs or thoughts that we've deemed undesirable. Affirmative action we explored, which is sort of similar. Good Samaritan laws. There's a lot of states that have adopted laws that make it a legal requirement that you help someone who's in distress. And if you see someone who's in distress and you don't help them, you can actually be brought up on charges. And again, you can see what the motivation here is that we want to use the force of law to make people be the kind of people that would help people in distress, which seems like there's nothing wrong with wanting people to be those kinds of people. But my question to you is should we, as some virtue ethicists would encourage us to do, should we use the force of power to create these kinds of character traits in individuals? Should we force people to donate money to charity because we think that being charitable is a desirable personality or characteristic? So that's the sort of broadly the question that I want you to consider here. Is what should the forces of power be used to? And as I mentioned to you at the very beginning of the week, that although people oftentimes find virtue ethics really attractive, it's this aspect of it, this compulsion to, not compulsion, that's the wrong word, this tendency to believe that we have an idea of the type of person that people should be in order to be good people, that tends to make people a little skittish. And I'm kind of curious to see how you weigh in on this question. All right, so that's one of the topics for you to consider on the discussion board this week.